Hi everybody, welcome back to the Cupcake Jemma channel with me, Sally, and Dane is here and Nikki as well. Little dream team coming to bring you another video. Today I'm going to show you guys how to sugar paste a cake. So sugar paste is the kind of roll out fondant that you get on kind of traditional wedding cakes and things. It went out of fashion a little bit when buttercream took over, and it's not like as nice to eat as buttercream, but it's really fun to work with and I really miss working with it. So I want to do it. So I thought I'd show you guys how to do it. I've also just added a sugar paste class to my baking classes, so you can come along and learn how to do it with me. I'll be there holding your hand every step of the way. Head to bakingclasses.co.uk and you can find out more there. There's loads of other classes as well. If you want to learn how to use buttercream, I'll teach you how to do that. If you want to learn how to make it or bake it or whatever you want to do, there's loads up there for everybody. So I would love to see you at one of my classes. Anyway, let's crack on. So the first thing you're going to need is some cake. I have got 3 layers of cake here and I've gone for our oh my gosh, look, already made a mess. I'm going for the standard C&D chocolate cake because it's really nice and firm. The only thing you want to be careful when you're making a sugar paste cake is the type of cake you're using. If you're using something that's really light and very fluffy and bouncy, it tends to not be great for sugar paste because sugar paste is very heavy and it can cause the cake to collapse. So as usual, I'm going to trim them down. So I've got my cake leveler here and I'm just going to do nice big strokes across the top of my cake, securing it with my left hand. And then as we get close to the edge, just slow down and cut into my hand like that. Don't cut into your hand, that would be dangerous. And then we can slide the top off. The last thing I like to do is just give it a little shake just to get rid of some crumbs, and then we'll do that to our other 2 layers of cake. All right, so now it's time to fill our cake and I'm just gonna do that as we normally do. And I'm using buttercream, so an American buttercream. It's a little bit stiffer than Swiss meringue buttercream. I don't wanna have anything, again, too light and fluffy because under the weight of the sugar paste, it might all kind of collapse and kind of splurge out everywhere. So that's why I like to go for American buttercream. I'm just taking a little bit on my palette knife. And as usual, got a turntable to make our lives easier. It doesn't need to be neat. This bit is just to stick our first layer of cake down. So I want this to be in the middle, so make sure that you're happy with where it is and then give it a little push down. And now I'm going to take a nice big blob of icing, pop it on the middle. It's always so much easier to use more icing and take off excess than it is to add bit by bit. When we add little by little, we tend to pick up loads of crumbs from the cake. So I like to try and not let my palette knife touch the cake and always make sure there's like a barrier of buttercream between it. That way we get it nice and clean. So now we're going to crumb coat it like we normally would for any kind of cake, and I'm actually going to use white chocolate ganache to do this. You can use any kind of ganache. Ganache is great under sugar paste because it sets really, really firm and you get a really nice solid base to work on. When we add our sugar paste, we're going to be putting quite a lot of pressure in towards the cake, so we want something that's kind of creating this hard shell to protect our nice spongy cake. So I've made my ganache this morning. So the ratio for the white chocolate ganache is 3 to 1, so 3 parts chocolate and 1 part cream. So in this bowl I've got 300 grams of white chocolate and 100 grams of double cream that I just melted together. Easiest way to do that is in a microwave. And I did that this morning because I want to let it cool down so that I can now whip it, because you probably can see that this is actually quite kind of oily and very kind of gooey looking. It doesn't look like it's going to be the easiest to ice with. So I'm just going to pop over here to my stand mixer and I'm going to pop all of this in. It's going to look quite weird as it comes out of the bowl. And then I'm going to drop the head and get this mixing on a medium to high speed. You'll see that the texture will change and it will go really white in colour. This works best when it's cooled rather than when it's hot. So that is done and you can see just how different it looks. It looks absolutely beautiful actually. It's really silky, very light in colour, and it's a much more spreadable consistency. If when you're making this, it just feels really runny, you just need to cool it down a bit so you can put the whole thing in the fridge, just 5 minutes, and then re-whip it. We're going to crumb coat with this. Because I've got chocolate cake and I've got white icing here, I'm actually going to put it into a piping bag. I feel like I've done this on my last few videos. I'm such a convert. It just keeps things so much neater. You're not kind of getting loads of crumbs in your crumb coat. And I'm just gonna cut about 1 centimetre. And now we're just gonna pipe this all around the edge of the cake. It's gonna look messy before it looks neat. That's just what's gonna happen. So now I'm going to spread the icing out to completely cover the cake. So starting on the top with the small palette knife and just doing the same technique that we used for filling our cake. For the sides, I'm going to use my large palette knife just because I can get the job done a bit quicker, but you can stick to using the small one. You'll get a little bit more control with it as well. Once the cake is completely covered in icing, we're going to smooth it out using our cake smoother. And then finally, we're going to pull in that collar of icing that we've created around the top so that we get a nice flat top and sharp corners. So that is the crumb coat done. It's very different to icing with buttercream when you're using the ganache, and you might feel that it's starting to set a little bit. Don't worry, just try and cover the whole cake. We're going to put a little bit more ganache on once it's been set in the fridge. So if you've got kind of some holes or cracks in there, don't worry, we're going to fill them all in before we sugar paste. So this is going to go into the fridge until it's firm to the touch, which should be around 30 minutes. Okay, so what I did was just filled in some of my holes in the kind of crumb coat just to make sure we've got a nice kind of smooth finish. It doesn't need to be flawless, remember, because we're going to cover it in sugar paste, but we don't want to have big kind of craters in there. One, we will actually see that through the sugar paste, but also you don't want to trap any air in there. So that's what I've done to my cake, and then whilst it was chilling out with its crumb coat, I coloured my sugar paste. You can buy sugar paste in loads of different colours, but you can also colour it as well. It's best to colour it with gel paste colours. They're much more concentrated, so you don't have to use as much of it. And I went for this ridiculously bright pink because it's real pretty. I've kept it covered in plastic because this stuff does dry out quite quickly. Now I'm going to use a little bit of corn flour just to dust the surface here, just to make sure it doesn't stick, because you can see that it does stick really easily. And before we start working with it, I'm just going to give it a little knead, just to make it nice and warm and stretchy. It's a bit like blue tack. So once it's nice and warm, I've got it into a nice smooth ball, very pleasing. And now we're going to start rolling it. When we're rolling, we want to try and get it in a circle. And the way we do that is we're going to do one forwards and backwards roll. And I'm going to pick the sugar paste up and turn it by 90 degrees. And I'm just going to go forwards and backwards once. I'm not going to go in like this, because it's going to get into a long kind of rectangle shape and we're never going to get it round. So just forwards and backwards and then flip it 90 degrees. So you can see when it gets quite big, the sheet of sugar paste, I'm using the rolling pin to help me lift it up and move it around. And I think that's going to be big enough. What we're looking for is about 4 to 5 millimeters in thickness. If it's thicker, it's fine. It's just going to be more sugar pasty. If it's too thin, it's going to be quite hard to get a nice smooth finish on it, and it also might break when we get it over the corners of our cake. And in terms of size, we obviously want to make sure we've got enough sugar paste. So you can kind of measure it with your rolling pin, get a sense of whether it's enough. Sometimes I like to pick the cake up and kind of take a little look at it like this. And before we put it over the cake, I'm just going to trim off some of these edges just to try and make it a little bit more circular, because we don't also want to have too much excess, because the weight of it is going to pull down and that's what's going to cause it to break. So let's get this on the cake. I'm going to use my rolling pin to pick the sugar paste up. I'm going to go from back to front. To you, it's front to back. I'm going to very gently roll the sugar paste over the top. Now we need to work quite quickly because we don't want it to pull and break. So I'm going to use my hand to start with, and I'm just smoothing the top on. And now quite quickly, I just want to run my hands around the corner of the cake. And I'm really trying to use this part of my hand, the ball, the heel, this bit here, rather than my fingers, so I don't get too many fingerprints in there. So now that my top and corners are stuck down, we can slow down a little bit, and we want to stick this, I call it a skirt. It looks a little bit like a skirt. We want to stick that down. If I just took my hands and kind of pushed it in, you can see how that's just going to crease and make lots of like horrible pleats in there. So I'm going to lightly open it out and pull gently downwards like that, turn the cake, and do the same. We're then going to move downwards and work on the bottom half of the cake, doing the same thing. So pulling the icing out a little bit and then taking our hand across it and smoothing it very lightly in towards the cake. And that way we shouldn't have any pleats or creases. So now that the sugar paste is completely covering the cake, we want to get rid of this excess straight away. So I'm going to take this cake smoother here and I'm going to use this right angle corner. I'm going to put the smoother flush against the side of the cake and then I'm going to stab down with that right angle to seal the cake, and then I'm going to take my little palette knife and trim off the excess. So now we're just going to work on smoothing this out, making sure we've got a nice clean finish to our sugar paste and working out any creases. I'm going to use the smoother for this. We don't want to use our hands anymore because we will end up with little fingerprints or indents where our fingers are, so we're only going to use our smoother. And we're just going to very simply work around the cake. I'm always keeping the smoother flush against the surface, that way I know I'm getting a nice kind of right angle. We might end up finding a few air bubbles like this guy here. That's absolutely totally fine, do not freak out. I'm going to take a pin or something with a nice sharp end to it. I'm going to poke it right in the middle of the air bubble, and then using the smoother I'm going to very gently ease out the air to smooth out the hole and get rid of any last imperfections on our cake. I mean, it's basically done, right? But I know that a lot of people like to get a nice sharp corner on their cakes, whether it's buttercream or sugar paste. So I'm just going to talk you through that. I'm going to make mine slightly sharp, but not like super duper sharp. The best things to use are 2 of these if you've got them. I also like using these flexi smoothers as well, and I put that one on the top, and then I'm going to use my big rigid smoother in my hand on the side of the cake, sorry. And what we're going to do is very gently bring the one on the side upwards and the one on the top across, and they're going to meet each other. And we're just going to go around very gently using this action. So upwards with one and across with the other. So getting this kind of corner does take a bit of time. Have patience, go around once, go around again, try not to force it all in one go. It's basically done, but I'm going to decorate it because it looks a bit boring right now. So I've got myself some extra colours of sugar paste that looks super cute with this lot. I've actually turned these into modelling paste. So what that means is I've just made them a little bit stiffer basically, because sugar paste is so soft that when we cut shapes from it, they can manipulate and stretch and look a bit rubbish. So to make modelling paste, it's super easy. You just need some of this. So this one here is called Sugar Cell. It used to be called CMC powder or gum tragacanth. There's some kind of gummy stuff that when you mix a little bit of it into the sugar paste and knead it and work it, it becomes much thicker and stiffer to use. You probably can't see it, but I'm telling you, okay? So I'm gonna roll these out again with a little bit of corn flour. And these you can get quite thin, particularly if we turn them into modelling paste. I've got some round cutters here that I'll dust into the corn flour, and then using some edible glue and a paintbrush, we're gonna stick them onto the sides and the top of the cake. That is all of my polka dots on the cake, and as you can see, I cut out all my shapes first and then I put them under this piece of plastic. That's just to try and keep it a little bit airtight because the sugar paste does dry out quite quickly, and I didn't want them to kind of crack when I then put them on the curved edge of my cake. So they're all on, but as you can see, I've got this little naked space here, and that's for my bow because I love a sugar paste bow. And I made this earlier really simply by cutting out a strip of sugar paste, and then I folded both ends into the center, and then I used my fingers to just pinch the middle of it, and then I secured this with a little bit of glue. I then cut out another piece of sugar paste and I just rolled the edges of these over just to make it look a little bit more realistic. And then I've glued this around the center of my bow. Finally, I've just rolled up some greaseproof paper and I've popped them inside the bow just to keep it nice and open as it dries out. And now that it has dried, I can take these out. That is gonna look so sweet, but I have also made the tails of the bow over here, and I did this in a similar way. I just cut 2 strips and then I've kind of draped them over these books, crumbs and doilies, obs, just so that they dry in the shape that I want them to be in and resting on the table. I wouldn't be able to do that straight onto the cake. So now I'm gonna grab the tails and my edible glue and secure them one at a time onto the cake. So cute. I didn't think it was gonna look this cute, I must say. I absolutely love it. I love the kind of like cartoon vibe that you get with sugar paste cakes. And it's really fun to try something new, and I really like going back to the old days, and we used to do so many of these cakes. Like, I was looking back through the archives and looking at some of the stuff we used to make, and they were insane. If you enjoyed that, then please give it a little thumbs up and let us know in the comments, and maybe we'll come back with some more sugar pasted techniques for you guys, because I would love to get a little bit more back into it. Also, if you want to come along to one of my classes, I've got the sugar paste one up there at the moment. If you want to learn how to do this with me there to give you some moral support and encouragement, then please head over to bakingclasses.co.uk and you can book yourself onto one of my classes. Don't forget to join our bake club over at patreon.com/Cupcake Jemma. You can join there and you can join the bake-alongs that the guys have been doing, like live bake-alongs where you can bake along with Gemma, and she'll be there to answer all your questions. Super cool. There's loads of other fun stuff up there as well, so just go and check it out. And one of us will be back next week with another video. I'm just gonna, well, Dane just asked if he could have a slice of this cake, and I'm just not sure I want anyone to cut it.
What?
Should we let him do it?
Yes.
He's gonna say yes because he's behind the camera. Well, anyway, thanks Dane for filming, and thanks Nikki as well for taking all the photos. Love you guys.